Welcome to another episode of the Core Link Solution, where we look to provide you with awareness and actionable insights. On this episode of the Core Link Solution, I am proud to bring you Ty Montague. And you know, the topic today is really, how do you become a story doer? You know, over the years, many of us have learned the value of storytelling. You know, storytelling has helped many of us transform our messages around mission, vision, purpose, and values into action with both our employees, as well as in terms of our value propositions with customers. But Ty is raising the stakes to another level in terms of moving from storytellers to story doers. So let me welcome to the show, Ty Montague. How are you, Ty?
James, it's so great to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, great to have you. And I see you look like you have a pair of, what kind of headphones are those?
These are Jabra headphones.
Okay, I like it. I like the red wire. It looks very nice contrast with your shirt. Looks really nice. Yeah, man. Let me read your full bio. I always like the people to know the background of folks on the show. Okay. Ty Montague is the co-founder and CEO of New York-based Co-Collective. Co-Collective is a creative and strategic transformation partner for purpose-led businesses. Co has helped some of the world's boldest companies begin their transformation journey by working with leadership teams to identify their higher purpose and bring that purpose to life throughout the business. Once a team aligns on their purpose, Co helps them design and deploy the new products, services, and content to make that purpose real for their customers and for their employees. Founded in 2010, the Co team has been fortunate to work with some of the most inspiring and progressive organizations and business leaders in the world, including Google, YouTube, LinkedIn, IBM, MetLife, Microsoft, the ACLU, MoMA, Infinity, Capital One, and Under Armour. In a previous career in advertising business, Ty was also an agent of positive change. As co-president and chief creative officer of J. Walter Thompson North America, Ty and his business partner, Rosemary Ryan, helped lead a 5-year transformation of that company. This effort culminated in JWT being named Adweek Magazine's 2009 Global Agency of the Year, the first award of its kind for JWT and its parent company, WPP, Before that, Ty launched and helped build the New York office of Bartle, Bogle, Hargitay, ran the New York office of Whedon and Kennedy, and worked at the New York office of Chiat Day. Over a 15-year period, Ty was fortunate to work with a blue-chip roster of companies including Nike, Ford, Mercedes-Benz, Coca-Cola, JetBlue, Diageo, Unilever, ESPN, to name a few. Ty is an author and frequent speaker on the topics of innovation, business transformation, and the power of story. His first book, True Story: How to Combine Story and Action to Transform Your Business, was published in 2013 by the Harvard Business Press. Ty has been named one of the 50 most influential creative people of the past 20 years by Creativity Magazine, as well as one of the top 10 creative minds in business by Fast Company Magazine. So again, welcome, Ty, to the show.
Great to be here, James.
A lot of scar tissue there, Ty.
I've lived several lives.
That's right. Are you like 25 in this life?
Yeah, I would say I'm a teenager in this one.
There you go. So, I always like to ask people, so the audience gets to know you personally a little bit. What would be one thing that you might be able to share that the people who know you best, that really know you, may not know about you?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I would say it's not something I'm shy about talking about, but I tend not to volunteer this information. I am a person who dropped out of both high school and college.
Is that right?
And, you would think that would have held me back. But I have been extremely fortunate in my life to find I guess a career path that is dependent more on meritocracy than on resume. And that's kind of how I got into the advertising business, is to be a creative person in that business. You didn't really have to have any credentials. You just had to be able to do ads. And so you had to prove that you could do ads by showing people a speculative portfolio, and either you had it or you didn't have it. And so I lucked into that, and the rest is I guess history.
That's your creativity, I guess, right? I mean, to be a creative, some would say, well, left brain, right? Creative usually on one side, the analytical and such usually on the other side, right?
Yeah, I think it's right brain is creative and left brain is analytical. I think. Yeah. No, I'm definitely a creative person. I love creative people. I love I love being in the business of ideas. I still believe I'm in the business of ideas at Co. Although we are, we get involved in much deeper layers of strategy than I did in the advertising business.
Gotcha.
So I have to flex the analytical side of my brain as well at Co, which I love.
Yeah, but because people expect a lot of outcomes, right, with your work there. So
that's exactly right. Yeah, our work is tied directly to business outcomes.
Absolutely. So, when I looked at some of the work you're doing here, I really love the concept. And maybe we can start with what led you to this idea of story doers, right? Storytelling, even to me, some are still just getting into that, right? This idea of storytelling versus, we go away as the leadership team, we create the PVM, right? The purpose, the vision, the mission. Then we create the listing of all the objectives and break them down into quarterly rocks. And then we come back and we give these edicts, right? And in between there, often the communication is sparse, right? So even getting people to move and flex to storytelling to some organizations is still new. What led you to this further path of storytelling, story doing rather?
Yeah. So, as you've already said, and we've already discussed, I was in the advertising business for many years, and I was a storyteller in business. I helped companies define their story, and then I helped them tell that story using mostly paid media, 30 and 60-second television commercials. And I loved that business, and I loved the people in it. It was a lot of fun. But about 15 years ago, a while back, maybe even further back than that, I started to notice some things about that business that I didn't love. One of them was it was very possible for a company to tell one story through the commercials that they were making and do an entirely different story, kind of in the actions that they were taking in the world. And that always bothered me. The second thing I noticed was that there was actually what felt like a new kind of company being born in the world, one that was managing to grow very large, very successful businesses without doing very much storytelling at all. In other words, they had a story, and story I still believe is fundamentally important. So I'm not at all anti-story now, but these companies were taking that story and expressing it through experience, through actual tangible customer experience, the physical spaces that they created, some cases the software and other products that they made, in some cases their business model. And, the first one I remember noticing was Starbucks. We all went through the experience of waking up one morning, or at least felt this way to me. You woke up one morning and suddenly there was a Starbucks on like every street corner in the country. Right. And at the same time, there wasn't any Starbucks advertising anywhere. And because I was in the advertising business, I was like, how did Starbucks do that? How did they build such a big, successful business without doing a bunch of paid media advertising? And I got curious and I started making lists, and I started to discover more of these companies. I noticed companies like Chipotle were running this play. Companies like Method Cleaning Products were running this play. Tesla is a story doing company. Google is a story doing company. Well, these are companies that have built massive businesses, and some of them advertise a little, but they didn't. It felt to me, and at this point it was just a feeling, right? I didn't have any data, but it just felt to me like they were operating in a different way. And as I went deeper on this, I noticed some of the things that made these companies different. And one of the primary things, one of the first things that I realized is that these companies have some kind of a higher purpose. They are on a quest to change the world in some cases, very ambitious way. And they, want to make it possible for you to join them in that quest as either an employee or as a customer.
Yeah, no, that's good. And I want to go into that quest. One question, quick question, tactically, before we go into the quest.
Sure, of course.
As you looked at those companies, one, I almost feel like I felt that almost like you had a fiduciary responsibility as you saw him kind of telling one story and living out another story, right? You felt some obligation there, right? To
yeah, that's right. I felt guilty.
Yeah, you feel guilty. The second thing, as you started to pull back the covers of those companies who were, again, living out the story, not spending as much advertising dollars, as you thought about them, and again, it could vary based on where they were in a life cycle, so to speak, right? But if it's a newer company and you're still in the quote unquote not profitable yet, right? Because you're still spending a lot to break through.
Yep.
Are there any particular metrics that pop to you? You know, I don't know, cost per acquisition, stronger customer returns, or anything that kind of pops as, you know, if companies are listening now saying, you know, we're earlier in stage, I'd love to even start, you know, noodling with this a little bit. What would be the first sign you'd see if you're story doing and could spend less on advertising? What would be the first sign you'd see?
Well, so let me try and answer that by talking a little bit about the questions that we ask potential clients. We have 6 questions that we ask them, and there's no science to that number. It's just, you know, what we've noticed is that every company is on a journey from, you know, or on a, put another way, is on a kind of scale between being a pure storyteller. There are very few of those, and a pure story doer.
Yes.
Everyone sort of falls somewhere along that continuum. And so we designed these 6 questions to help you define where you are on that journey. The first one is, do you have a story? And many companies would answer, when we talk to them, answer that question by saying, our problem is we have too many stories. We haven't, as a leadership team, really defined on a line on what is the one story, what is the story that we are going to tell for the next 10 to 20 years? What is the one thing that we want people to take away from about us? And so we help companies do that. Does your story define an ambition beyond commercial aspiration? Is it a quest? In other words, does it have a higher purpose to it? Are you trying to give something back to the world with your story? That's a very important aspect of a quest. Have you defined a clear enemy? Because knowing what you're for is great, but knowing what you're against can be even more energizing, right? What are you fighting against? What dragon are you getting out of bed every day to slay? Like, who's your Darth Vader? Is your story being used to drive innovation throughout the company? In other words, your quest should be, once you use it, a tool that you use to make decisions every day inside the business. It's not something that gets carved up in your lobby or written down on a piece of paper and put in a desk drawer. You should be using it every day, and people inside your company need to know how to use it. So then, have you defined a few iconic or transformative innovations to focus on? So what we mean when we talk about iconic innovations is, you know, a quest should help you understand. When you understand the higher purpose that you're serving, you then go a click down and you go, okay, therefore, how are we making that quest real to our customers through the products that we make, through at every touch point, right? The products we make, the services that we provide, our business model in some cases, and then maybe communication. But so it's not that we're even anti-communication, it's just we're anti-communication first.
Yes.
Do your story, make it real for your employees and your customers, and make people understand that you really mean it. And then, you know, potentially do some communication. And the best story doing companies have defined a couple of actions that they have taken that get famous. You know, they are riveting in one way or another and cause people to sit up and kind of take notice and begin to talk about them. Starbucks, just to continue that example, and Starbucks is not a client of ours, by the way. This is not our work.
Gotcha.
But Starbucks, for instance, you know, after years after it had gotten very big and successful and kind of lost its way a little bit, Howard Schultz rejoined the company. And the first thing he did on day one of his return is he shut every Starbucks store in the country, in the world, for an entire day, for a day of retraining all of the baristas. And his point was, we've forgotten that we're about coffee, and we need to get back to that. And everybody, I want the entire company to focus on that for a day. That helped get everybody back on the right page at Starbucks, but it also got a huge amount of media attention and helped people understand that, like, Starbucks got that they needed to do something different and something new, and it got a lot of press coverage. Are people outside the company engaging with and participating in your quest? So have you created a purpose that is meaningful enough and inspiring enough for people that they want to actually help you get it done? And by that I mean employees, but also customers, right? And so if you're sitting here listening to this podcast, start by asking yourself those 6 questions. You may have 3 of them in the bag already, which means you're already on the journey to being a story doer. It's a very rare company that can answer all 6 of those questions in the affirmative. And if you can, you probably don't need us.
Yeah, no, that's good. And so what typically leads a company to engaging you?
Well, it's interesting. We often get called when, we do work with some startups, and we do work with some very big companies. And we often get called when a company has realized that they need to change. There is something going on in their business that has gotten their attention, and they have realized that they need to make change, but they are not exactly sure what change they need to make in order to solve the problem. And we often will begin a conversation just helping them, get their head around how to articulate their own need, right? What is causing the problem that you have now noticed? And, what might we do to get you back on, what we would call, an authentic path. Often companies get out of, whack with, they start to sense that there's a delta between the things that they're saying and the things that they're doing. And they want to try to bring their words and deeds closer together.
Yeah, that makes sense. And, once you start this, and you alluded to some of this with the 6 questions, but it's the 2-part question. One, as the company starts to go through this and they say, look, I want some of that goodness, but I'm sure they turn to you and say, Ty, what are the outcomes I can expect? What do you feel that, pretty much guarantee that, as we go through and guarantee is a strong word to use, but what should we expect as outcomes if we go through this quest process with you?
Sure. And I can talk to you about some specific examples. It's hard for me to talk about our clients. A lot of the work that we do for our clients is fairly confidential, but one way to answer that is to say we have, I told you back at the beginning, when I looked at the list of story doing companies that I put together, my sense, in addition to just not doing as much advertising, there's a feeling that you get from these companies that is palpably more modern. There's something more human about them. And you kind of sense the difference. And so we wanted to find out whether, in fact, the feeling that we had about these companies, the feelings that we were having, that they're more human, that they're more efficient businesses potentially, was true. And so we created a study. We've run it now 3 different times. We have run it on 50 different publicly traded companies in 7 different commercial categories. And we've run it 3 times. The results have come back the same each time. And if any of your listeners want to know more about the methodology, you can go to storydoing.com, and we've got it all up online. But what we've learned is that as we suspected originally, story doing companies are, in addition to not spending as much on media, they're growing faster. They're actually more successful businesses. Their stock price has grown faster since 2007, I think was our first data. They're more than twice as likely to be perceived by consumers as being future thinking or like modern. Feel a little bit more like they're from the future.
Yeah.
They're more than twice as likely to be perceived as innovative. The story-doing companies get more credit for being good places to work. And they create more consumer loyalty. So both employees and consumers tend to be more loyal at story-doing companies. And probably because of this fact, they get almost twice as many mentions in social media as more traditional story telling businesses. So people just want to talk more about these companies, and they are twice as likely to recommend these companies to a friend if they're already a customer.
Got it.
And they achieve all of those metrics, spending only a third of what more traditional storytelling companies spend in paid media. So those are the outcomes that that interest us, is the business metrics. Because if it's everybody wants to make the world a better place until it's going to hurt the bottom line, and then things don't go so well. And our strong belief, with some evidence to back it up now, is that this is actually you can build a more successful business by operating in this way, a business that is outrunning traditional storytelling companies. Yeah.
That's good. And this is probably a gross misrepresentation and replay of what you said. But, here's how I'm digesting this. Almost like in a world where everyone is taught to pump more out almost per hour of social media or above the line advertising. This is almost say less, do more.
Yeah.
Right. Do your story more. And the benefits could be everything from lower cost of acquisition, customers who return more, customers who in turn tell your story and get more customers for you, more earned media, employees who stay longer, so higher employee engagement, lower attrition, which means lower cost to fill seats. And so all this goodness comes, but you have to have the patience to do first and not talk, and then see the fruits of it over time.
Exactly right. That's well said.
Good. I love that. I love that. Let me ask you this. I'm just curious, just for grins and giggles, how many folks have thought they wanted to start the quest, and as you show them the process and what they may have to go through, say, you know what, I can't do it? Well,
that's a great question. Actually, nobody's ever asked me that question before, but we do see a drop off in the doing part of our process. Some clients get up to the edge and we develop the story with them, and it's in the doing of it that they get a little shy. It's a process, and change is hard inside companies, as you very well know. So, and the hardest thing to do is to change behavior. So, we try to stay optimistic about that, and just see those clients as folks that are going to take a little more time to get there. The interesting thing is, even those who don't necessarily implement the doing ideas that we bring to them, because we have a creative team that will help clients develop ideas. We do all of our work. I should probably have said this in the beginning. All of our work is done collaboratively with clients. We have strategists and creative people on staff at Code, but we work with our clients. So we're not a disappear and come up with the golden answer and then come back and try to sell it to a client. Our ideas and our thinking and our strategy are developed with the client, because fundamentally, it's not a thing that you can make up, right? You have to draw. It's based on fundamental truths about the company itself and the people in the company. And so that has to be drawn out of people. But, even when clients go through the process and decide not to implement the ideas that we have co-developed with them, they find tremendous benefit in just being able to have the words to articulate to their own employees and to their customers about what they really stand for in the world. So
that's good. And to your point of change and embracing all that change, right, which could be so different for folks. How has this year looked in terms of clients that could have either, gotten ready to start with you right before the pandemic started and then social unrest, were already in work, or existing clients you've done work for that said, wow, in this moment, Ty, I need to come back and do some work. What's that felt like during this period?
Yeah, we've had some of both of those things happen, but in the beginning, I can tell you it was terrifying, as it was for everybody. There was so much uncertainty about what the pandemic was going to mean for businesses, and we're a project-based service business,
Sure.
so if you're not keeping the funnel full, like, things get thin fast, and so we were kind of simultaneously hoping for the best and preparing for the worst, and fortunately we have come through very well. There has been no lack of demand for advice during this period of time, and maybe we should have understood that in advance. But it's been great to see clients that we have worked with in the past, as you said, reach out again and ask for advice, and it's been great we've actually gotten several net new clients during this time who are all, contending with issues that started before the global pandemic and the George Floyd, essentially murder in Minneapolis.
Mm-hmm.
And so those have been sort of created a new layer that clients have had to contend with. I mean, we publish a newsletter about and we publish a series of we call them story do's and story don'ts. We try to publish examples of companies that are doing really great positive things in this time, and companies that are maybe need to rethink their strategy a little bit. And just a couple of examples from that. The pandemic, you saw some companies, just rise to the occasion and make the pivot immediately to using whatever they had at their disposal to help solve the problem. Companies like Under Armour, which, full disclosure, is a client of ours. They pivoted from using their abilities to make athletic apparel to making a super innovative folding, they called it an origami mask, for frontline workers, healthcare workers, and started producing them in massive quantities, first in Baltimore and then outside of Baltimore. And that turned into a product for them, the UA Sports Mask, that is now available for every athlete. And so that's an example of a company that just, and it's part of the Under Armour culture is to just, deal with what comes and stay hungry and stay on your toes, because, life comes at you fast. So they responded well. Dyson, pivoted to making ventilators when it was just the pandemic, another great example. And then there were companies that really kind of fumbled it. Budweiser, as the pandemic wore on, there was a movement of people who wanted to not wear masks and to go back to get life back to normal. And Budweiser leaned into that, which is it's like, look, you can't blame people for being bored or unhappy about social distancing. But if you're a company, the absolute wrong thing to do is to try to reinforce that behavior, right, even if it benefits you. So they did a promotion called the Taste of Freedom promotion, where they did a commercial announcing that promotion, that it's like, we should all get back together. Everything's going to be fine. Everything's just like normal. And you should buy some Budweiser, by the way. And it's things like that made me really happy to get out of the advertising business, because I'm sure the folks, behind that were unhappy that they were being asked to do that, I mean, so, and then George Floyd, same thing. You had some companies like Step Up. I'm sure, I don't know if you follow. This is an example of advertising being used. I mean, Nike had already, kind of come out in support of Colin Kaepernick, right, which was the right thing to do, but a risky thing to do. If you're Nike, you know you're going to lose some customers over that. They did the right thing and came out in support of Cap. So when the George Floyd murder occurred, they immediately put out a commercial that was very credible, right? It wasn't a story for Nike because they were already on the record in support of this. And so that was super effective, so effective that Adidas, a competitor, reposted the Nike spot in support. Said this is the right thing to be doing, even though obviously it's a blood rivalry between those two companies. Right? So super interesting. And then LinkedIn, again, full disclosure, a client did a fascinating thing where they realized that there was bias that is created in the A/B testing that a lot of software companies do as they're testing different versions of software, and that the way that those A/B tests were being run was inherently biased. And so they created a solution to sort of seek out or search out the bias if you're a software company and you're making software, to look for the bias in it and point it out to you. And they open sourced that. So that's an example of, LinkedIn's quest is to create economic opportunity for every member of the global workforce. Mm-hmm. And if that is your quest, then you've got to be an anti-bias company. And they did that story by creating a tool to help all software companies, be anti-bias companies. So that's a great example. And then again, on the story don'ts, there are a bunch of these. The CrossFit CEO coming out and having to retire because of his racial remarks. Refinery 29 having, a toxic and racist internal culture, and trying to jump on the Black Lives Matter bandwagon and being outed by their own employees. That's the thing, is like, if you are being inauthentic, like these days, you're going to get in trouble, man. That it is just not possible anymore, right? Yeah. And so that's a big change. I think that's been becoming truer and truer, but the combination of the pandemic and the Me Too movement and Black Lives Matter now, are making any lack of transparency just super dangerous for companies, which is a great thing.
Absolutely. This is good, Ty. I mean, so many good takeaway points here in what you shared. And I love the 6 questions. I think they're going to be extremely helpful for the audience to think through. Those who are considering maybe reaching out to you, they can give themselves a checkup before they make that phone call because they know what to expect, right? Give questions. Would you say?
No, that's right. That's exactly right. Yeah, you can self-diagnose before you get the call.
Exactly, before you make the call. As we begin to wrap up, any other pieces of advice or parting words that people should consider, in this moment and longer term in regards to considering a quest?
Yeah, look, I mean, this might be a little philosophical. It's less, I guess, business advice than it is just an observation. I really believe that this is, we're in a moment where, as a country, we need to look into our own soul, because we have been telling a story very effectively for a long time. It started out with all men are created equal. Maybe the fact that it was all men, it was a problem right from the beginning. Like, it should be all people are created equal.
Amen.
And we built an incredibly aspirational environment based on that belief that you could come here and be whatever you dreamed you could be. And that has turned out to not be true, right? We are doing a very different story in America.
Correct.
And we must get those two things in alignment, because all of us know that if you meet a person who you realize tells you one story but does another, if you meet a company that tells you one story and does another, or if you see a country that tells one story and does another, they lose all credibility with you. They lose your trust. And, this is our credibility on the global stage is at stake in this time, and so we need to crush down that delta. We need to get our words and deeds aligned. The original idea was the right idea. We just need to do our story here in America.
That's so good. I mean, that what you just closed with is the ultimate example of a disparity between telling and doing. The ultimate disparity. So good. So good. Well, Core Solution audience, you heard it from Ty Montague, representing Co-Collective, the co-founder here. Again, those are our statements. Those are Ty's statements. As always, want you to soak it in, and we'd love to hear your feedback on whatever channel you're watching this on or listening to it on. Throw your comments in the comments section, and we'll certainly get back to you. Thank you for watching and listening to another episode of the Core Solution. See you next time.